Most sustainability programs begin with a question that sounds reasonable. How do we reduce our impact on nature? For 40 years, that question has driven reporting frameworks, targets, certifications, roadmaps, and improvement initiatives all around the world. And yet, many leaders still have the same uneasy feeling. Progress is real, effort is real, investment is real, but somehow it still feels insufficient. Why? I think part of the answer lies in a hidden assumption. The assumption that nature is something outside of the business, something you have to protect, something to manage, something to reduce harm to. But what if nature is not merely the object of our concern? What if nature is actually the benchmark? When we treat nature as external, we ask questions like, how do we reduce waste? How do we reduce emissions? How do we reduce impact? Those are all legitimate questions, but they keep us focused on symptoms. They rarely challenge the underlying operating logic of the business itself. And that matters because businesses are systems. The question is not whether a business has sustainability goals. The question is whether the system itself is capable of enduring. Nature has sustained life on Earth for roughly 4 billion years, as far as we can tell. Not because nothing dies, not because nothing changes, not because everything remains stable. It's exactly the opposite. Nature persists because creation, maturity, death, and renewal are all built into the system. Nothing lasts forever. Everything participates in a larger cycle, and the conditions that are necessary for life are continually renewed. That is why I say nature is the benchmark. Not because we should copy nature, not because business should become biology, but because nature remains the only known system that has successfully sustained itself over immense periods of time. If we want businesses that are capable of enduring, that benchmark deserves attention. Now, one of the belief pairs I explore in my book, Our Common Future Now, is this. On the one hand, nature is fragile and external, versus nature is the benchmark for design intelligence. The first belief tends to produce compliance, mitigation, and reduction. The second produces a different question entirely. So, what makes a system capable of sustaining itself? That is a far more strategic question. Over the last decade, this question led me to develop a framework called the tactical tetrahedron. The inspiration came partly from the work of R. Buckminster Fuller, who observed that the tetrahedron is the first stable three-dimensional structure that's possible. Most business thinking is still built around a flat two-dimensional model. And the focus? Growth, growth, and growth. But nature doesn't operate that way. It's not that nature doesn't grow. The tactical tetrahedron is built around four key elements. Creation, the spark that starts everything off. Growth through to maturity, when reproduction becomes possible. And then aging to death. And beneath them all, the conditions that are absolutely required, that are necessary for life to exist. Creation gives rise to new possibilities. Maturity creates value and sustains into the future. and death creates a space for renewal. And all three depend upon the conditions that make life possible in the first place. Remove those conditions and the entire structure collapses. Now, the deeper insight is that this pattern exists at every scale. Businesses move through creation, maturity, and renewal. Products do. Services do. Projects do. And even markets do. And ideas as well. Inside every stage, the same pattern repeats. Creation contains creation, maturity, and death within it. Maturity contains creation, maturity, and death within it. And death contains creation, maturity, and death as well. The pattern repeats across scales, the same way that nature itself operates. And this gives leaders a way to move from the highest strategic level to the smallest operational design decision without changing the underlying logic. Many organizations today are trying to become more sustainable while continuing to operate from assumptions that were never designed for endurance. The result is often progress without the change that's anticipated, activity without recalibration, improvement without renewal. Nature suggests a different possibility, not because nature is perfect, but because nature demonstrates that durable systems require more than just efficiency. They require participation in cycles of creation, maturity, death, and renewal, while maintaining the conditions that make that future value possible. The future of business will not be determined by who publishes the most reports, or who sets the most targets, or uses the most sustainability language. It will be determined by which organizations learn how to create value while sustaining the conditions that make future value creation possible. Because, of course, a business must sustain itself economically. That's non-negotiable for a business. A business that cannot sustain itself cannot sustain anything else for very long either. But a business must also avoid undermining the conditions upon which all future prosperity depends. Those responsibilities are not alternatives or choices. They are simultaneous. The real challenge is learning how to sustain both at the same time. That's why nature is not merely something to protect. Nature is the benchmark itself. Not because business should imitate nature. Not because business should become biology. But because nature remains the only known system that has sustained creation, maturity, death, and renewal over immense periods of time while maintaining the conditions that make that future life possible. And perhaps the most important question any leader can ask is this: what are the conditions that make your future possible? And are your business decisions helping to sustain them? If these ideas resonate with you, subscribe to the channel and follow this series as we continue exploring the operating beliefs that shape business decisions in ways that most organizations never examine. You can also learn more through circularityedge.com and my forthcoming book, Our Common Future Now, to be published in September 2026. And if your organization has reached the point where progress is real, but still somehow feels insufficient, then start with a conversation. Because the goal is never to save the planet. The goal is to sustain the conditions that support life on Earth for all species far into the future, including the businesses, communities, families, and institutions that depend on those very conditions to exist.